Hola mis amigos and possible amigos, my name is Taff316. Welcome back to another reaction video, and welcome to another reaction to Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe. Series 2 Episode 6 is a lot like Series 1 Episode 6. It's just a clip show recap of the earlier episodes in the series. So we're going to skip that and go to Series 3 Episode 1. Glad I didn't change the theme. The third and final series, by the way.
Bonjour, je suis Charlie et vous regardez Weekly Wipe, une émission sur ce qu'il se passe, des choses comme celle-ci.
Former Home Secretary Leon Britton died, prompting a nationwide rumour-mongering contest.
There were so many horrific allegations about him, the government's vowed to collate them all into some sort of dossier and then lose it. There was disgrace as the consecration of the highest-profile female bishop since marriage in Neighbours was interrupted.
No, not in the Bible.
The protester shouted it wasn't in the Bible. Just like bishops, cathedrals, stained glass windows, Christmas carols, and the Bible, which isn't in the Bible either. She's called Libby Lane, which sounds like a porn name, but she's not a porn, she's a bishop.
Was that Felipe from the Postmodern Family?
There were triumphant scenes in Greece as Antonio Banderas won a surprise victory. Syriza's logo looks a bit Microsoft Windows, which seems appropriate for a country that keeps crashing. More of that sort of thing in a bit, but first, we often bemoan the fact that this show starts its run during January, because usually very little happens in January. But this year, events emerged snarling straight out of the gate.
Whoa.
Horror on the streets of Paris. An Islamist massacre at a magazine leaves 12 dead and a nation in shock.
2015 had hardly begun when a shocking Islamist terror atrocity took place in France. News channels were suddenly plastered with 3 days of horror and bloodshed ending in a coordinated police assault. It left the world reeling.
For a while, an outpouring of shock and
sympathy
led to a show of unity with people all around the globe proudly declaring Je suis Charlie. And I don't want to sound like a hipster here, but I was saying Je suis Charlie back when I was 11 years old in French class.
A huge demonstration took place in Paris with people of all creeds and colours coming together as one, as well as an entire Panini album's worth of prominent leaders showing their support in scenes closely resembling the world's most depressing can-can. But would all this inspirational hippy-dippy unity last long? No. Of course, what the terrorists want is for atrocities like this to goad everyone into picking up the same mental polarising goggles they use, which divide the world into simple clumps of goodies and baddies.
In reality, of course, the world isn't black and white, more like 50 Shades of Grey, a punishing story in which everything and everyone is
That's
Across
true.
the ocean, the bombastic Fox News was already wearing simple polarising goggles of its own.
We are being hunted, so how would you like for us to be protected? What message do you want to send?
I think the best thing that Americans can do is arm themselves.
Me too.
How can Americans arm themselves more than they already are? What are they going to do? Glue guns to the end of their guns?
Sometimes bad guys don't look like bad guys.
Right, and that's my question about these guys, because if we know they were speaking unaccented French and they had, ski masks on, do we even know what color they were, what the tone of their skin was? I mean, what if they didn't look like typical bad guys?
Well, it's simple. You just don't open fire till you've identified them as bad guys from your handy pocket-sized skin tone chart of evil.
What you
it's
saying
also
there?
available as an app.
Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Janine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. We need to kill them.
What?
We need to kill them.
What, you and me? How are we going to do that?
Bomb them, and bomb them again.
Ironically, this is a bit like being radicalised by an ideological hate preacher in a slickly produced video. Some commentators weren't just concerned about Islamic terrorists, but the whole...
For anyone wondering why America is so politically divided, this is the type of brain damage television that the majority of American conservatives spend their day consuming. So, yeah.
Ironically, this is a bit like being radicalised by an ideological hate preacher in a slickly produced video. Some commentators weren't just concerned about Islamic terrorists, but the whole of Islam, claiming the Islamification of Europe had gone too far, and it's time we drew a veil over it, then removed that veil and banned it. Fox News raised eyebrows by erroneously claiming Paris contains Islam-only no-go zones, then raised them even further with an astonishing exclusive revealing Britain's got no-go cities.
In Britain, it's not just no-go zones. There are actual cities like Birmingham that are totally Muslim, where non-Muslims just simply don't go in.
Yeah, Birmingham, halal on earth. Other religions don't even get a look in. There's only half a dozen Hindus. They're known as the Birmingham Sikhs.
Of course, the police have
Really?
been investigating Birmingham for decades. As this intriguing film proves, TV's Kojak was investigating the place back in 1981.
Riding the express elevator to the top of one of the city's highest buildings, this is the view that nearly took my breath away.
God, look at that. Mosques and minarets as far as the eye can't see. Still away from Birmingham, you can't even trust the cops, as the Foxbert explained.
Parts of London, there are actually Muslim religious police that actually beat and actually wound seriously anyone who doesn't dress according to religious Muslim attire.
Yeah, and you know where those Islamic police are based? Scotland Jihad.
Oh, that's really good. Again. Do you get it? Like, this is... If you're wondering why it seems like half of America has brain damage, it's because they do. It's because they do.
Anyway, as well as no-go zones that weren't there, questions were also raised about average everyday Muslims who didn't have anything to do with this. What did they have to do with this? Well, to find out, I've got one in the studio with me now. So, hey, representing all Muslims as you do, when are you lot going to do more to condemn the violence?
Well, for some time now, many Muslims have spoken out against this type of violence.
I can't hear you.
Well, I'm actually trying to explain.
I suppose I can take this as tacit approval. Tacit approval, everyone.
In a bid to promote harmony, government Sontaran Eric Pickles tried to tackle extremism by writing a letter urging Muslims to do all they could to distance themselves from extremism.
Trouble was, he couldn't find an address for the Jihadi Psychopath Council and instead wrote to every mosque in Britain.
The Muslim Council had a problem with who the letter targeted.
Why are the Muslim community being singled out?
Cameron said people who had a problem with the letter were the problem.
And anyone, frankly, reading this letter who has a problem with it, I think really has a problem.
And the news decided to find out if it was a problem for people who hadn't even read it yet because they'd been invited on to discuss something else.
Do you think Mr. Pickles is patronising the Muslim community?
Well, I have to confess, I haven't read the letter myself.
Well, what are you doing in politics? Come on, everyone's talking about it. It's the middle of the afternoon and you still haven't read this.
I don't think you're being terribly fair. Your
so
viewers can make their own decision.
You get the party line right. OK, well, we'll have to end it there. As Shadow Business Secretary, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, well done.
The
Another
fuck?
victory for division and hatred. Of course,
Not to say your country doesn't have problems too, as just noted. Not to say we're all fucked, basically. We're all fucked.
Paris atrocity wasn't just an attack on specific humans, but more widely on freedom of speech. It proved the pen may be mightier than the sword, but falters in round two when up against the Kalashnikov. Charlie Hebdo was an outspoken critic of more or less everything, every religion, including Islam, and had caused controversy in the past by featuring cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, something it defiantly did again. It was the most controversial cartoon since Scrappy-Doo, and it caused the news media a real problem. Should they show the cover or not show the cover? The end result was a game of cartoon prophet peekaboo, where the cover was almost, but not quite, pictured in full. Instead, it was pictured being bundled up, folded over on a newsagent's counter, going for a ride with its buddies, and being carried at some distance by a French Prime Minister with a death wish. Sky News had a close call live on air when a former Charlie Hebdo employee tried to show it to their cameras.
Cannot show a simple drawing as that. With
Mohammed here at Sky News, we've chosen not to show that cover, so we would appreciate Caroline not showing that. I do apologise.
Didn't realise Sky News is a non-profit organisation. Naturally, as a fearless satirical programme, we were going to show you the controversial front cover of Charlie Hebdo, but unfortunately, it's completely sold out.
No, they managed to get one.
Oh.
Sorry?
One of the runners got one.
They didn't.
They did.
No, they didn't. Our backup plan was to print one out, but the bloody printer went and broke.
No, IT fixed that. It was a bit weird, actually. Someone had wedged one of your socks into it.
I hadn't. They didn't.
Well, someone had.
No. Actually, could you just fuck off? Because I'm trying to do the programme. Anyway, that's all academic, because we're waiting to hear whether we can show you it at all from the BBC legal department, and we've heard nothing. So we're powerless thanks to those bloody those bloody cowards. Typical bleeding heart liberal BBC milquetoasts with it.
No less an authority than the Pope, pictured here in scenes resembling the world's most popular milk round, said freedom of speech should have limitations, claiming he'd knock out anyone who mocked his mum, for instance.
But never mind the Pope and his horrible mother, what do young people think about freedom of speech? Well, in an effort to broaden this show's appeal, I've been commanded to give airtime to members of the YouTube community, little BBC Three bastards. So here's one, a typical vlogger. He's called Zeb, and he's worried about freedom of speech. Go Zeb.
Okay.
Hi gang, Zeb here, just saying hello. Hi! So I've been kind of quiet lately.
Oh,
My last
Christ.
upload was back on Christmas Day, unboxing the presents. Oh, that is sick! I'll put it with the others. Obviously, since then, the world's had a crazy time couple of weeks.
I missed
Something
this time
pretty
on YouTube,
awful
to be honest.
happened in France. So I thought, come on, Zeb, what can you do to help France out? And I had a quick think. And I figured I'd do a supportive Instagram. But then I figured I could do more. I had another think. And decided to do the video you're watching now. About something everyone's been talking about ever since
This
Charlie
is
Hebdo
really
got
accurate,
shot.
too.
Freedom of speech! Okay, so freedom of speech has to be one of the most important freedoms there is. It's blatantly my top 5 freedoms. Sometimes I say things that other people don't like my video last month where I said I still wasn't sure about Clara as a Doctor Who companion. Some of the comments underneath were really personal.
That's
and
too early for
frankly
me.
out of line, but I didn't shoot the people
Not
who
there
left
yet.
those comments, even though I wanted to a lot, because I respect their freedom of speech. So, why is freedom of speech so cool? I'll tell you. Reason 1. Speech is like my job. Without freedom of speech, I wouldn't have you 3 million subscribers,
What?
which means I wouldn't have my book deal, I wouldn't be able to pay for this flat, and I'd either be destitute or have to go work alongside Dad at KPMG. Reason 2. Freedom of speech doesn't cost
Nah,
anything,
cat.
hence the word free. Think about it. Without free artistic expression, you'd actually have to pay for music or epic downloads like Guardians of the Galaxy. Reason 3. Without freedom of speech, I wouldn't be able to tell you how great, say, these new double caramel Kit Kats are. And they really are yum. Thanks, Nestle, for sending me these. But hey, wait! Now, I'm not saying under freedom of speech you should be able to say anything, because, hello, no, obviously not. Because then you might say a load of racist stuff, sexist stuff, just stuff that could rub people up the wrong way, like Katie Hopkins. And if you haven't signed my petition about her yet, there's a link below.
I'll sign
You
it.
should have the freedom of speech to go on Twitter and say horrible things, but then the police should have the freedom of speech to say you're under arrest, and then arrest you and put you in jail. Because that way it's all fair and everyone's free, if you think about it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for another cool upload every 15 seconds. Thanks for watching. Bye!
That was really good.
Entertainment! And ITV zhuzh up the nation's weekend with bright, jangly, super spangly Bibblecast Get Your Act Together, the
Oh,
show
boy.
that redefines entertainment as something you pray wasn't happening and would give anything to stop. It's hosted by Stephen Mulhern, a perky visual cross between
course it is.
Robbie Williams and Ant and Dec.
Nicely done. How are you?
I've been better.
Welcome to Get Your Act Together, the show which sees celebrities team up with masters from the world of entertainment.
Okay, what's in it?
Now, if I was to say to you, you're going to see a loose woman perform a plate spinning act with a Vegas showman, you're going to see a rugby legend strapped from the rafters with acrobats, and Brian McFadden try to escape sudden death with Penn and Teller, you'd most probably say to me, Stephen, you're having a laugh.
No, I'd say, Stephen, you're listing things I couldn't give a f***
Yeah, I'm not interested,
blended
Stephen.
high-octane front-of-house showbiz with effortlessly casual backstage chit-chat.
You are going to see everything that goes on backstage and everything that's happening on stage. You all right, Charlie? Good evening, Governor. Good stuff. Enjoy the show.
Classic bants.
Yeah.
But enjoying
Classic
the show
not
meant
scripted
withstanding
bants.
a confusing format mashup in which famous people were tasked with learning a new act in a few days, which meant lots of lengthy training sequences culminating in an on-stage moment of truth. Sadly, the acts were mostly underwhelming, consisting of C-grade impersonations,
Sunita up a stick,
and a bit where a bloke hung from a belt from the ceiling, something I felt like doing several times while watching. But in case all this wasn't enough, and to be fair it wasn't, the show was also a sort of gogglebox homage as we were forced to eavesdrop on tedious conversations held by members of the studio audience, some of them civilians with nothing to say,
I thought it was graceful.
while others were random celebrities with famous nothing to say.
But they needed it to be together. darling, you're being fairly pernickety, but of course you are a choreographer. Amongst other things.
Amongst other things.
Amongst other things.
The indisputed high point
Yeah, that
came
seems
as
kinda shit, I'm
former
not gonna lie.
Westlife tonsil Brian McFadden took part in an escapologist's act suspended over a bed of spikes. This is quite nerve-wracking, actually, because there's a slim chance he might live.
There was this sort of Tudor soap opera thing called Wolf Hall set in
Wolf
super
Hall?
yesterday times, like properly ages ago. It was sort of like Game of Thrones without the dragons or the gory bits or the nudity.
Damn.
Or sort of majestic sweeping shots of awe-inspiring landscapes, which meant it was all British people in weird hats just sort of talking.
Oh, I thought it was about to transition to
Is
the...
the Queen's nephew. If he has the Pope, then the King's divorce petition...
Oh, he looks familiar. I thought I was about to go into Clockwork Orange theme for a second.
People in, all mixed in together. Like how the Avengers has the Hulk and Iron Man, this had Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn and David Essex and Dick Turpin and Jimmy Savile in it.
There were so many people, other characters had to stop and ask who they all were.
Who is that? Stephen Gardner, my secretary.
And who is that? The main bloke spent most of his time looking sad because he had to wear this stupid uniform for work. And his dad was a horse mechanic who was horrible to him.
I'm a lawyer. Lawyer?
I found it boring, but I wasn't sure if it was boring because it was boring or boring because it was good. Like how the theatre's good, but totally boring.
I get you.
People said it was slow, but to be fair, it was set before cars, so the main bloke had to go everywhere on foot. So each time he had to be in a different place, he had to walk all the way there from wherever he'd been. And he had to do it loads, like he was walking all the time. I mean, it must have been knackering. That's why he had to keep taking rests in between walks, where he'd just sort of stand around looking glum. And his wife died, which was sad.
Oh.
And then his kids died, which is even sadder.
Bruh!
Although, if you think about it, they only lived in olden times, so it wasn't like they missed out on much. Like, they didn't even have chips back then, or Wi-Fi, or Mark Ronson, or Broadchurch, or like, I don't know, Hungry Hippos, or Buckaroo, or even Don't Tip the Waiter. I mean, there was nothing to do back then. They were so desperate for stuff to do that for entertainment, they had to watch people sweep stuff up, or poke cobwebs, or read books. It was total shithouse. So being alive must have been almost the same as being dead anyway.
You know those traditional
Sure.
fairy tales where a young woman wonders when her prince will come? Well, this isn't anything like that.
Got it.
Buckingham Palace denies claims by a woman in the US that she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew when she was underage.
Yes, there were shocking allegations about Prince Andrew, which the palace denied. The trouble stemmed from his former friendship with billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew raised eyebrows when he was spotted meeting Epstein in this uncomfortable picture, and captured in this uncomfortable picture with his arm around the woman at the centre of the storm.
And I'm really not insinuating anything, but if you look closely, he is sort of red-handed in this photograph.
Yeah.
Mind you, he is royal. Maybe he's just murdered a fox. Faced with lurid headlines, the palace issued an emphatic denial, followed by another even more emphatic denial, just in case you hadn't caught the emphaticness
Yeah, how about now?
of the first one. Interestingly,
How about
while the
now?
press had a field day, the TV news tended to lead on the denial rather than the accusation.
Categorically untrue.
Can't help thinking if this was happening to Sir Cliff instead of Prince Andrew, they wouldn't have reporters standing outside the palace. They'd have a helicopter in the air, filming police searching the place.
Yeah, how
Could you
about
imagine
now?
how long it'd take to dust Buckingham Palace for Prince? The Duke of York's reputation has suffered ups and downs before. When it was up, and when it was down, and when it was only halfway up, he resigned as British trade envoy. The BBC's thrilling Top Gear show returned this week, much to the delight of white men, but don't worry if you missed that in every episode of Top Gear ever, because Cut and Paste Maestro's Cassette Boy have distilled every episode of Top Gear ever into one easy-to-munch package, which starts when I drop my hand onto the desk.
This is a motoring show. It's very irritating and a little bit boring. To give you a taste of what you can expect, we have prepared a little montage.
Can you drive a car?
Driving is easy.
Driving is extremely difficult. This is important.
I don't like electric boot closing. Jeremy,
What?
Bad enough, seriously.
I just don't like being on Top Gear. It's
It's awful, you know, and I hate it.
I present this entire show with two penises. It's a cop show, in essence. Halfords! We won the war. Then you rate the
How
other motorists.
What?
Racial stereotyping.
How long was this before Clarkson got fired? Like a year?
Last week, we were running guns from Libya into Mali and fighting a traffic warden, who, by the way, has just hung himself.
Anyway, tonight we are having a race up the side of New Zealand from here to
the prostitute's front door. Now, my guest tonight is utterly pointless.
Who's it, me?
Richard Hammond is a mealy-mouthed, small-minded idiot. You are sacked. You are going to be shot in front of your family. I have got a photograph of the replacement for Richard Hammond and James May. But now, the blacks.
Flares!
Yeah!
And once upon a time, back in the days of cheerfully sexist advertising, the Sun happily paraded itself as the newspaper of choice for winners.
Win £50,000 on Sun 2-card bingo. Win the exciting Mitsubishi Starion Turbo. It's the meanest car on the street. And win the holiday of a lifetime with sizzling Samantha Fox. 6 sun-kissed days and nights on a paradise island.
You should be so lucky.
It's all in your super soar-away
I
Sun this week.
But Page 3 created an unrealistic and unattainable image for women. Large-breasted, semi-naked, two-dimensional and made of paper. People have often said the Sun is sexist, although to be fair, it does actually cover a lot of female issues. It's even got a whole page devoted to vaginal discharge, by which I mean the outpourings of a... But now it seemed Page 3 had popped its tits.
The Sun is reported to be dropping its regular Page 3 pictures of topless models.
The tragic loss was great for TV news because it meant they got to drape saucy soar-away footage all over their bulletins. Although in sinister echoes of the Charlie Hebdo cover story, Page 3 was an image so incendiary, many felt compelled to hide or blur it out, thereby simulating how it might look if you visited a nudist camp while suffering from glaucoma. And yet across the news, triumphant anti-Page 3 campaigners were claiming it wasn't the nudity they'd had a problem with.
That's not the issue. The issue is, you know, Page 1, George Osborne's budget. Page 2, what's happening in Iraq or Afghanistan. Page 3, a woman's bare breasts.
What's the problem? You can masturbate to any of those things. Former Page 3 girls like Nicola McLean enlivened 5 News by saying the whole thing was an infringement of women's freedom of breasts. And they were also asking whether racy male imagery like this was going to be clamped down on too.
Can we not, you know, look at David Beckham then in his pants doing his underwear adverts with his bulge out for me to
but
see?
his actual testicles aren't out, are they?
Yeah, well, they do have to protect readers with a nut allergy. But never mind mere women. What about planet Earth's most important inhabitants? Men. The news immediately ran outside to harvest opinion from stereotypical working-class Sun reader blokes. And they weren't hard to find, thanks to all those high-vis jackets.
Are you going to stop buying the Sun because they've got rid of these pictures?
Definitely.
What, are you going to stop buying the Sun?
Yeah, it's boring.
Ah, come on, cheer up, love. Might never happen. Show us your bum. Oi, oi! But a few days later, Sky News was visibly stunned to discover Page 3 wasn't as dead as the Sun had never claimed it was.
It's back.
What? What?
Yes, it turned out they weren't
What?
dropping Page 3 after all, and it reappeared with a winking, topless model and a triumphant caption mocking their critics, a sort of revenge porn. That'll teach you, eh, women? The Sun's put you in your place, back in your box, in the kitchen, under a glass ceiling that's been badly parked, with your tits out. Now run along and make my dinner.
Jesus.
She's got nothing on. Technology! And 2015 is the year Back to the Future 2 promised us would resemble this eye-popping vision of the future. But the reality is even more impressive, as you're about to see. You sure you're ready for this? Okay?
They got the Cubs winning the World Series,
Meet
right?
tomorrow. Yes, in a bid to transform the chilling sci-fi nightmare world of Terminator into a laughable reality, the Russian military recently put a cyborg biker through its paces in astonishing scenes on Russia Today. The Russians were clearly enamoured with their mute, expressionless machine man because they invited him to watch through a window as the robot rode a bike. Stig 2.0 here can do almost anything, if you define anything as the ability to trundle along at 8 miles an hour. But it looks certain to be a formidable foe on the battlefield of the future because nothing can stop him, except maybe a spot of rain, or an incline of more than 4 degrees, or a 9-year-old boy with a magnet on a string. But all of that was nothing compared to what Microsoft unveiled during a gobsmacking launch event for Windows 10, fronted by a man who didn't seem entirely real.
So we invented the most advanced
holographic computer the world has ever seen.
Is it you?
Microsoft HoloLens.
Yes, this might look like a pair of groovy welding goggles, but it's actually the most incredible advance since bottled bread. Magic specs that stunningly blend computer visuals with the real world to demonstrate what it might look like if you actually had an imagination. As the glitzerly, terrifying promo made clear, you'll soon be living in a world where you won't know what's real and what isn't, which means I'm now even more convinced their front man isn't real.
You'll be living in a world where you're forced to watch the MLS.
He sometimes made noises like he was crashing.
As you just saw, holograms are being sculpted by some of the most creative people around. But holograms are not just for creative people.
What?
But holograms are not just for creative people.
Are they also for the dolphins you just tried to communicate with? It seems anyone will be able to do anything with holograms. Turn your living room into Minecraft, explore the surface of Mars, sculpt imaginary objects. It's all the fun of a complete mental breakdown in a headset, and it promises to utterly revolutionise the way you trip over obstacles, bump into walls and accidentally molest bystanders forever. Although do be warned, when it crashes you'll find yourself marooned in the blue screen of death for all eternity. Saturday marked 50 years since the death of legendary Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and tributes have flowed thick and fast. Here's one that's very much the former, from our very own Philomena Kunk, who joins us now for a moment of wonder.
Oh boy.
(1940 AD). France has fallen. Hitler has conquered Europe. Britain is on the verge of invasion. In the words of Bonnie Tyler, we're holding out for a hero.
Nice.
And unlike that song, originally recorded for the film Footloose starring Kevin Bacon, Britain got its hero. Winston Churchill. The first question is who or what is Churchill? The answer is who. He was born like most people and went to school, but unlike most people, he was also Prime Minister in black and white times, which was not a moment too soon because of a war, the war that would make him famous, War II.
I like to Google it.
Was like War I, but easier to understand because the baddie was better. Adolf Hitler rather than mud. Imagine what it was like in the war room on May the something, 1940. With Hitler's invasion of France a complete success, the debate was furious. Should Britain make peace or fight on alone? Although in this reconstruction, no one's arguing out loud because we can't afford equity rates. Leading the peacemongers was Lord Halifax. No one knows what he looks like, so we can have anyone play him and spend the money on a half-decent Churchill who wanted to keep on fighting. Some of Churchill's words are immortal. If the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour. And never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. If he'd been alive today, just imagine how good his tweets would have been. I've never met Churchill, so the best way to understand him is to ask someone else who never met him. Hello, who are you?
My name is Dr. Peter Catterall. I'm Reader in History at the University of Westminster.
Why do we say Churchill won the war when we know he didn't have a proper go at it himself, did he?
What do you mean in terms of fighting?
Yeah. He just sat underground in a hole, didn't he, smoking, telling people what to do, like a minicab operator.
Well, I suppose in some ways it's quite a good analogy, because unless you've got someone directing the fleet, the soldiers, the tanks, etc., then similarly it's not going to work.
Yeah. Churchill was sort of out of shape, wasn't he? Like, he was quite overweight and he drank and smoked a lot. He couldn't even climb a ladder, could he? How good a role model do you think he was, really?
I think he would find it difficult.
I mean, if you don't look at the fact that he won the war.
And indeed, before the war came along, he'd been out of office for 10 years. So, politically, he was in the wilderness.
What was he doing in the wilderness?
It's a metaphor. He was not in the government. He was on the Conservative backbenches.
Why did they have the backbenches in the wilderness?
The wilderness is a reference to the fact that he's not in office.
How did Winston Churchill come to invent Tipp-Ex?
Well, he didn't.
It's amazing to imagine that Churchill literally single-handedly
That dude
stopped
went off
Germany
himself.
from winning War II with his funny voice and his big cigar. And then one day, he just vanished. Nobody knows where he went.
He died.
Next week on Moments of Wonder, I'll be finding out what's the heaviest month of the year.
It's definitely not February.
Well, that's about all we've got time for this week, so until next time, au revoir.
So much French. Uh-oh, the phone. Show the comic, Brooker. That's like a train track. That's right, the HoloLens is what they made out of the technology that they originally developed with the Microsoft Kinect, I think, for the Xbox. They actually came out with a HoloLens 2 a couple years ago. The reason you probably don't hear about it as often, or at least I don't, is probably because its introductory price was $3,500. And who the fuck's got that kind of money? I know I sure don't. Good lord. Well, lots of heavy stuff in that episode, especially at the beginning. I gotta tell you, that YouTuber impersonation was great. Like, that time in YouTube was annoying, but honestly, I miss it just because it's a lot better than whatever the fuck YouTube is now. Now we got reaction channels, and nobody likes that. Bring back the vlogs, brother. Alright, well, that is it for another reaction. Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you didn't like it, don't. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the video description down below, as well as names of all my Patrons. If you didn't know, you can be a Patreon on me for as low as $1 or £1. You get extra direction videos, as well as reading comments of today early, sometimes more. For all that being said, though, my name is Taffers Team. It's been another reaction. Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.